Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of a specially called meeting for the UCPS school reopening plan. I call this meeting to order. I need a motion to approve the agenda. There's only one thing on it, which is the school reopening plan.
So moved.
Second.
Christina? Thank you. So the next thing is the school reopening plan.
Need to take a vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. That is 7-0. Next is the school reopening plan, Dr. Houlihan.
Thank you, Ms. Heintel, and thank you, board. Thank you for joining us this evening. There's obviously a lot going on with regards to school reopening across the state and certainly most here in Union County Public Schools. As you can see, we have our cabinet staff on this call because we want to make sure that whatever questions we have that we're properly able to answer. And this evening, we are very pleased to share with the board our Union County Public Schools reopening plan for 2020-2021. I want to acknowledge the board and thank you for your support. And I also want to acknowledge all of our employees who have not been in a regular school setting since March 13th. And want to say thank you to our senior team. Thank you to our principals, to our teachers, to our support staff. The development of the many options and the plans and the preparedness that has been going on kind of behind the scenes to gear up for August 17th has been Herculean. And I just want to acknowledge the hard work of our team. At this time, I am going to ask Ms. Stalbert, she's going to share her screen and we are going to present a kind of a formal presentation. What I will ask is that if I'm going to take lead on delivering that presentation and would ask if possible to save questions till the end. We know that there will probably be, not just for the board, but for also the general public, there will be a lot more questions than we may have answers to, and that's okay. And I think that the commitment that we have as a team is if there is a question that we are not either, we don't know the answer to or can't speak to it, we will certainly provide an answer in the future. I also wanted to let you know that this is a presentation that will outline our reopening plans under Plan A, B, and C, as well as what we're going to be referring to as a Plan D, which is a Union County Public Schools kind of virtual academy. I think it's important to note for the general public the strong likelihood that, as you are probably aware, the governor today announced a statewide opening under Plan B. But I want everyone to keep in mind that I use the word flexible and nimble, that there is a great chance that we could move between all of these plans within the district or within the school. So it is important, I think, to go ahead and let everyone know what would school look like under each of these plans. Ms. Stalbert, I saw the presentation and then it went away because she's saying, yep, she's fixing it. Okay. You couldn't advance it. So we're calling our plan Keeping You Safe. This is going to be guidance for instruction, operations, health, and safety. As the general public knows, we have been closed since March. We have taken a great amount of time to listen, to gather feedback, to consult with our local, state, and federal experts on safety measures, on instruction, on health. And I've really used a lot of guidance in consultation with local experts, as well as statewide experts and federal, to really kind of think through how do we safely reopen schools in the fall. We are working on a much more detailed full plan that will be released in the coming weeks that will include additional details about reopening of schools. Today, the governor obviously announced Plan B for the state. There are also new protocols and guidance from the Department of Health and Human Services that our staff has to comb through and incorporate in a much more consolidated, detailed, and specific plan but we hope that tonight this gives a general overview as to how this will work when we come to August 17th. These are the 4 different areas that have given us guidance. As you all may remember, the state of North Carolina released 2 documents, the Strong Schools North Carolina Public Health Toolkit and the Lighting Our Way Forward Guidebook. Both of those, according to the new guidance issued by the governor today, have been updated. I've shared that document with the board earlier today. We also have consulted with our Union County public health experts and stakeholders. We've done a lot of work since March to get feedback from our senior leaders, our principals, our administrators, our teachers, and our parents. We've also talked to students. My student advisory council during the last semester met at least once, maybe twice with all schools, and we got a lot of great feedback from our students as well. So there are 4 kind of guiding principles or critical factors that we're going to present this evening. One, obviously, is instructional planning. The second is student health. The third is employee health. And the final one is operations and logistics. So this is a kind of a 4-column chart that really gives some much more details on kind of the guidance we've been giving with regard to Plan A, which is minimal social distancing, all students in school at some time. And I agree, as a parent, I want Plan A. As a former teacher and principal, I want Plan A. And I think the overwhelming majority of our families may want Plan A. And that is something that we strive to get to at some point. But again, as you've heard from Governor Cooper, we're going to begin the year under Plan B. Plan B is that blended instruction, right? With a hybrid mix between face-to-face instruction and remote learning. They have changed some of the guidance with regard to 50% capacity. It is now more focused on a requirement around 6 feet of social distancing. Students can be divided into rotating groups or rotating weeks, whichever school districts choose. And under Plan B, again, it would be this balance between remote learning and live face-to-face instruction. Plan C is remote learning. School buildings are closed. I think there's a big difference with Plan C moving forward and or parts of Plan B when you think about the term remote learning. We learned a lot last year from our remote learning execution. We're working on submitting a remote learning plan to the state. It is due July the 20th. And our goal for the upcoming school year for students is, while you are not physically located in a building, we strive to provide you live instruction and or what I'm calling on demand, which would be instruction that is videoed and recorded that would be available for you, kind of on an on-demand timeline. And then there's Plan D. And in Plan D, that is a local Union County Public Schools offering. I consider this to be somewhat of a school choice model where we will have the ability to provide virtual academy instruction of a school within a school model, beginning in grade 2 and extending to grade 12. And in that plan, that would be a minimum of a semester-long commitment from families. We would give the option for a year-long commitment as well. But in that environment, a dedicated set of teachers from your base or your home school would provide you instruction 5 days a week, even though it would be virtual. There would be no requirement to come in. And that is an option that many families have been emailing me about and advocating for. And, we've really wanted to embrace this idea. We do have currently, and obviously Union County virtual, but expanding that and looking at a grade 2 through 12 option for families who may want to take advantage of that. That is proposed to be an option for all for all students and employees that need that as well. This will be determined by a school and cluster basis, by grade level in terms of the numbers of children or families that opt in. And so that is something that we want to offer as an option. And on Plan D, I'm going to talk about the specifics towards the end, but we are pleased to let you know that we have developed kind of like an application for this school choice model, and that is poised to go live on Monday of next week and would be open for at least the full week, Monday through Sunday. It's really important on Plan D to get some data back sooner rather than later with regard to the number of families that might opt into that for the purposes of scheduling and for the purpose of student assignment. So again, today, the governor announced that all schools will open under Plan B, which is a hybrid mix of in-person and remote learning. And that will be our recommendation for Union County Public Schools as well. We do have the ability to be more restrictive and go with a Plan C. That may be the case throughout the entire year for the district or for an individual school. But right now, our recommendation is to open Union County Public Schools under that Plan B model. And I will say, subject to change. It is very important for everyone to understand that this is a very fluid situation. I want to remind everyone we've never done this before, and I'm very proud of our team and our staff for really thinking through how to safely reopen under a Plan B scenario. So here's kind of looking ahead to next year. There are 6 different areas that we're going to focus on this evening. I'm not going to read them out loud to you, but specifically under Plan B, we'd like for you all to know kind of what our recommendation is for these kind of 6 areas. So under this plan, there we go. Under this plan, we are proposing to implement a hybrid model, which is a combination of face-to-face and remote learning. What that means is that obviously children would get time in school, face-to-face with their teachers, as well as time at home in a remote learning situation. We did a survey back early on, and we had almost greater than 15,000 total responses. There was a lot of our responses came from middle and high school, and of those who responded, more 54% preferred a daily rotation, about 30% a half-day rotation, and about 40% a weekly rotation. Many school systems have kind of gone out already and communicated their plans, and you're seeing specifically in North Carolina across the largest 12 school districts, a wide variety of plans under Plan B. Some have chosen to do weekly in terms of, a third 1 week and then 2 weeks off. Some have said, we're going to keep our high school students at home and open those buildings for middle or elementary. In our parent response and talking with teachers and administrators, it has become very clear to me and to our team that a daily rotation in some form is very important, that our educators want to see and need to see children every week and want to see them, and may have some concerns about a weekly model. And so that's what we will be proposing this evening. So what we're recommending is a 4-day weekly rotation model for grades pre-K through 12. What that means is Monday through Thursday, students would be assigned at least 1 day a week to come in on a face-to-face environment. Friday would be used for remote learning for all students. This schedule would repeat for as long as we're in Plan B. And we do recognize that in this plan, we may have situations where class sizes are small, or we have health and safety issues that we need to take into consideration, and that there may be a possibility to accommodate more students beyond 1 day of face-to-face. But we will reevaluate this schedule on an ongoing basis. And again, this would be subject to change. A lot of possible changes to this may depend upon the amount of students that opt into a Plan D, a virtual environment. That would reduce the number of students that need a face-to-face. And again, I want to be very clear. We certainly understand, and I recognize the fact that we want to have our children in school as many days a week as possible. I've gotten a lot of emails about other systems in the area that are doing an A-day, B-day rotation where half the kids come in 1 day and half the kids come and they're having 2 or 3 days. Those systems are much smaller than us. They're looking at, 20,000 students less than we are. And when you think about the operational and logistical aspect of a Plan B, there are many requirements under this, which include daily temperature checks and health protocols and screenings. And I will say publicly that, as a parent, as an educator, I want my kids to have more than 1 day in the building. And our suggestion and recommendation is we really want to kind of go slow now to go fast later. And we are committed to evaluating this plan. And as data presents it, as we kind of get this thing going, as we are able to add more days of face-to-face instruction, that is going to be our commitment for those families who need it or that we can provide that. But that would be our current proposal for a Plan B scenario. This is what that might look like. Families would be notified as to the day in which their child comes to school. And again, with Friday being remote learning for all K-12. So let's talk about health and safety. This really refers to the protocol set forth by the Department of Health and Human Services. We will be conducting daily symptom and temperature screenings for all students and anyone who enters the building. We will have social distancing protocols for anyone in our schools. The governor today announced that all students K-12 must wear face coverings in schools and on buses. Same with staff and visitors. We are asking for additional guidance on that because there is some conflicting information about the previous executive order and this new one. And so we are trying to ensure that we have the appropriate information. I am pleased to let you know that we will be providing at least 5 face coverings for all students, teachers, and staff. And we have had the ability to procure more face coverings for employees. Again, we're going to follow all of our CDC, state, and health guidelines. Our schools will be required to establish a dedicated space for anyone who may be symptomatic of COVID-19. We're going to provide as much support to families and students as we can when it comes to health and safety. And we will be sharing timely and accurate information with regard to COVID-19 cases at schools. I also want to make sure that we're very clear, and I want to speak directly to our teachers and employees. I've had a tremendous amount of emails and communication with regard to what's best for students, and I absolutely agree with that. I also want to say that we must ensure the safety and the protection of our employees, of all of our employees, not just our teachers. And I want our community to know that we're taking this very seriously. And I really want our teachers and staff to know that during this time of reopening, that is going to be a #1 priority, the safety and the health and well-being of our students and our staff. And I want to reiterate that that has been a driving message and a driving force behind these decisions. And finally, on this subject, the state has provided all school districts with what they're calling starter packs for nurses. And within these packs include thermometers, they include face shields, surgical gowns, and masks. On the operations under Plan B, what we're going to propose is that we are going to not only adhere to cleaning protocols for for all buildings following all guidelines, but we're actually proposing to increase the schedules for regular daily high touch areas so that we can ensure that there are places like door handles, doorknobs, tables, etc., that we are going to be cleaning them more often than regular, and obviously requiring a 6 feet social distancing separation throughout classrooms and schools. We're also looking to install physical barriers where we can, such as sneeze guards. A lot of this is what you will see in front office reception areas. Again, that would ensure social distancing of at least 6 feet. Signage is going to be a new addition to our schools, with throughout the schools and our offices with reminders. And we are going to be limiting non-essential use of buildings as well as visitors and outside groups. That is going to be a requirement as issued by the state of North Carolina. On social and emotional health of our employees, we established a COVID-19 helpline for employees a few weeks ago. We're going to continue with that. That is staffed by our nursing department, and they have done a tremendous job helping us kind of troubleshoot and helping our employees with issues they're having. Our student support team and our nursing team are going to continue to provide mental health and wellness support. Obviously, we want our employees to follow all CDC, state, and local guidelines. One of the biggest needs that has emerged is childcare, and we are currently exploring an option that will let our after-school care program and/or community partners work with us to provide childcare service for our employees. We have not landed on a final plan for that. We hope to in the coming week, but that is something that has been expressed as a dire need, and that we have a strong goal to implement that and provide that service for our staff. Transportation, we know that school buses will operate at a reduced capacity. Today, they changed that capacity to being 1 student per seat, as opposed to the former guidelines of 24 to a bus. We are also required to follow the latest screening requirements, including the use of an attestation form that that students and parents can submit with regard to symptom evaluation. School nutrition, we are going to continue to prepare our meals in cafeterias, obviously using all food safety and sanitary procedures. We are going to be implementing what we're calling self-serve lunches. Self-serve lunches will be replaced with individually kind of prepared grab and go and/or classroom meal delivery. We know that we have to allow for more than adequate time for hand washing and adjusting our master schedules for eating. And again, we recognize that we have children with food allergies, and that will continue to be a priority with regard to safety. When it comes to, what happens after school, we believe right now we'll have some limited after school care programming. At one point, we thought we might have to cancel. We are really exploring the idea of not having to do that. The operation of all school clubs and extracurriculars are really contingent on state guidelines. And the North Carolina High School Athletic Association has yet to determine what will happen with fall sports. We know that is a big issue across the state. We're waiting on guidance from that association, and we'll continue to update the board on what that decision is, and would obviously follow whatever guidance that we get from that association. I mentioned our kind of a UCPS local virtual academy. So this is going to be an exciting brand new model for our kids and for our staff. And what this would indicate is a full-time virtual option for grades 2 through 12. I am proposing that we issue a Chromebook to every second grade student, regardless of if you want to participate in a virtual academy or the Plan B hybrid. We do believe we have the ability to provide those second grade students with a Chromebook. This would be a school within a school model, or possibly a school within a cluster model. an existing administrator and teacher would oversee this academy. And we're asking families to commit to at least 1 semester with an evaluation of that for the second semester. And if we have families that say they want to choose a year commitment, we would make that as an option as well. We plan to launch that application on Monday, July 20th, and again, would close that July 26th. Some might ask, well, that's a really short window to make a decision. You know, why such a short time frame? We're a month away from school. We typically give out schedules 2 to 3 weeks, or more before the school year begins. And so we really need to figure out parent choice on this subject so that we can begin issuing schedules the week of August the 3rd. So that is the reason why we're under such a sense of urgency. And I would ask that the public continue to stay tuned on kind of what that virtual academy will look like and the application process. There will be a district message about that opportunity, as well as a school-based communication, letting families know of where to go to apply. We also want to recognize that under any plan A, B, C, or D, the social and emotional health and safety of our students is going to be a priority. As I mentioned, and as we all know, we have been out of school for quite a long time, and reintroducing our students back into a face-to-face environment or even in a virtual environment, we recognize the fact that the social, emotional, and mental health needs are going to be great. And I'm very, very proud of our support team. We are going to be reintroducing school-based support teams that will be composed of nurses, social workers, psychologists, SROs that will serve almost like a site-based team, but specifically on social and emotional health. These teams will provide support to students in live meetings, small group sessions, and that support will be provided no matter if you're in a remote learning environment or a Plan D or in a face-to-face environment. So I want the board to know and the public to know that we recognize this is certainly an area that we need to devote resources to, and we are planning to do so. And finally, we have a lot of next steps. We have such a short amount of time. August 17th is going to be here before you know it. We got to finalize our much more detailed plan. We've really got to execute schedules. We will be sending out information in the form of a survey, perhaps, to really look at transportation needs. In the survey we put out, where we had 17,000 responses, almost half of the individuals that took that said that they would not be requesting transportation. However, we need to ask a few more detailed questions by school and by grade level. So expect to have a new transportation survey coming out soon. We also have to look at our technology resources and deploy those for the grade levels that are impacted. And finally, we have still some more significant work to prepare our buildings and our offices for reopening. So a lot to be done between now and August 17th. As you are probably aware, if you heard, we are still under a stay-at-home order by the governor. So we will be asking our essential personnel and staff to really kind of help us on the boots on the ground preparation items to get all of this ready. And again, I would like to reiterate to the board, we believe at this point in time that our plan for reopening of schools under Plan B is doable. We'll keep students and staff safe. We'll execute on an instructional model that we believe will be very successful. And while I admit that our goal is to get children into school more often in a face-to-face environment for those who want that, we are committed to trying to solve that challenge. But we must let the data and the manner in which we're executing this first phase of Plan B help us make those decisions. So board members, that concludes my presentation, and we are happy to take any and all questions at this time.
I have a question. With respect to our virtual Plan D, Are we going to have IB programming, DLI programming, pre-K, there won't be pre-K, EC? What would be?
Yes, the answer would be yes. Anything that we would offer in a face-to-face environment, EC, AIG, dual language, we are preparing to offer that in a virtual academy program, as long as we have the enrollment numbers to support the teaching staff to man that program.
Okay. My other thing is when you were talking about surveys, are we going to survey parents about what their students are going to do? I know that there's an application that you're doing. Are we, for just the virtual piece, are you just going to assume that if they don't do virtual, they're in the regular? Are we going to ask those questions? Are we going to ask teachers what their thought process is for what they would prefer to do, whether to go in school or do virtual, or how is that going to work?
So our HR staff is working on, I'm going to start with the back end. Our HR team is working on I don't want to say a commitment form, but a kind of an interest survey for our teachers on which models work best for you and kind of your feelings based on our plan B about returning. And that would be deployed at the school level. Our principals have already been collecting a lot of that data, but we do intend to ask our teachers about that. Secondly, and so I'm sorry, repeat the first part of that question.
First part of the question, about parents and what their students are going to do next year. So are we just assuming if they don't do an application for the virtual that they're going to be in school? Correct?
That would be, yes, that would be the first assumption. But what I would add to that is that schools will also be communicating. There will be a district message, but our schools will follow up with a school-based message about that opportunity for those parents who may not be aware of that message or who did not hear that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to capture everything that we need to know for school to start. You talked about the fact that we need to know if kids are going to be in school, if it'll give us more flexibility for other things. So that was my question. The other thing that you didn't talk about, what about seniors? And time with their counselors for college and career help and things like that. How do you see that going in this environment?
So I would say twofold. Number one, during the day that they would physically be in there under Plan B, that would become part of their schedule, just like they would kind of in a normal situation. But the other benefit to a Friday of remote learning for all, that does not mean that our buildings would be closed. So there could be the potential that, by appointment or by however schools are able to manage that seniors, as an example, could come in on Fridays in addition to their other day that they come to accomplish those goals and to meet, one-on-one with a counselor or a teacher or whatever that might be. Okay. As an option. I
have more questions, but I'll let other board members go first.
I have one question. Could you define 50% capacity? Is that 50% of the school's capacity, or is it 50% of enrollment?
They got rid of 50%.
So this afternoon, They did away with that, and they focused more on the 6 feet social distancing in a traditional classroom. And talking with Mr. Strickland today, what that means is on the average, 8 to 12 desks or 8 to 12 students in a room with their teacher when you configure that. We have a lot of schools that don't have the same kind of classroom sizes, but the 8 to 12 figure on average is probably a safe bet.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions and a couple of comments as well. And I'll do like Kathy, I'll just throw a couple out there and then I'll give somebody else a turn. First of all, a comment. Anybody who thinks an elementary school kid is going to be able to go through a whole school day wearing a mask is either dreaming or they've never had children. They will probably have within the first hour their mask dirtied up. And the last thing we would want is for them to have a mask on or that mask on all day long. So I'll just offer that comment. The next comment is I'm concerned about K and first grade. They're not going to, virtual options not going to work. So that basically means that they're going to go into any kind of instruction, structured setting, what have you, for 1 day a week. I would just like to ask staff to examine the possibility of the kindergarten and the first grade classes, take into account capacity, how we could spread it around if it's even possible, to go on a similar to A schedule, just for kindergarten and first grade. See if that's even a possibility. I would also like to ask staff to examine the opportunity for Wolf School to go on for our students that are determined not to be at health risk, to see if we can get an exemption if necessary to go on a similar Plan A or full-time in the building. One of the questions I have is around things changing hopefully for the better. And one of the things I really never get in these discussions when we're here on the state or the federal level is, what does better look like? What is the end goal to where we feel it's safe enough to move to Plan A? I haven't heard that discussion yet. And it's even difficult to get, I think, accurate information of where we are. I'll give you, for instance, and I mentioned in curriculum committee this morning, we're a county of 240,000 people. And to date, as of yesterday, we have 1,864 diagnosed cases of COVID-19, okay? Less than 1%. Of those 1,864 cases, 909 are no longer being monitored. And I think that's their way of saying hopefully they're cured. And unfortunately, 30 fatalities. But what I have difficulty finding out is information like how many tests have we actually given to get those 1,864 cases? And what are the trends in hospitalization? And I'm hoping that if we have that data, and I'm going to get with Mr. McCraw about that, I'm taking that on a regular basis. If we can develop that data, that perhaps there will be an opportunity for a waiver or some independence in the way that we handle moving on down the road as we all hope this subsides. But that's part of my concern in trying to figure out how we get to A, is to have the data to be able to substantiate that things are improving. And those are my comments. I'll lend the floor to my colleagues for some additional questions and comments.
Dr. Hulan, do you have anything first to?
I mean, all I'll comment on is, I know that Mr. McCraw is our lead person with our nurse supervisors with regard to kind of the data and the metrics, and working together with our local health department in consultation with the state. You know, your question on, well, what's the point in which we get to a Plan A? I think I don't know if you're going to like this answer, but I don't know. I think that we have to evaluate this on a daily basis. I mean, in order to make those decisions where we feel like moving into a larger face-to-face environment is going to be safe and healthy. And I think if we start school under this kind of small manner in which it's an A, B, C, D under Plan B, that may position us to have a greater rate of success to get to Plan A. So, Mr. Sides, I think that it's a combination of what are the metrics and the data telling us, and based on our implementation model, what would in consultation with Health and Human Services, when would we get the green light to move forward? I think the other part of that conversation is what's the metrics we're using if in a school or in the district we have to move away from Plan B and go to a Plan C. And all of those are very, very fluid decisions and very dependent upon the local data we have at a particular school. So I don't know if that answers that part of the question, but it is a constant conversation and dialogue.
Well, I think the common point is we need to make sure we're collecting accurate data countywide and of course for UCPS. And then my other two comments, is there any opportunity to looking at kindergarten and first grade for more of a more than one day a week in the school, and then also for Wolf School as well? If you could just look into those, I don't expect an answer now, but that'd be something I'd like to see if we could examine further, if that's a possibility.
The short answer is yes. And I think the board and the public should expect moving forward at every monthly board meeting, we are probably going to have a standing agenda item called reopening updates or school opening updates. We have a board meeting in a couple of weeks, and if we're able to answer those questions by then, Mr. Sides, which I would anticipate we will, then I'll be glad to provide that update to the board.
Thank you. And it may get to a point where we have to have more meetings to get updates if things start to change. But I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, so I have a point of clarity. So I want to make sure I'm clear and then make sure everybody else is getting that same message. So A through D days assigned, right? So kids are divided up in 25% population going into the school, those that don't choose the virtual academy. My understanding, and I want to make sure that this is clear, is if I'm in A day, I go to school on Monday, but I also have virtual learning Tuesday through Thursday when the other children are going into the on-premise, for their on-premise day. I will also have instruction that will be a live feed as well as taped, that if I can't watch it during during the actual time, I'll have the ability to go back and get that instruction. So I want to make sure that everybody understands this is still 5 days of learning. Friday's remote for everybody, but Monday through Thursday is instructional with 1 day on-prem. So I wanted to make sure that I'm clear on that and that everybody understands that.
And it's not like remote learning back in April and May where we didn't have that, but it's live.
Right.
Is it going to be live in their classroom? What's the idea for?
The vision is to answer the questions are yes, that is the goal that we have. We obviously have technical tests we have to do. We have to make sure we have the bandwidth, but we believe we have that capacity, and that is the goal. Now, on the flip side, I keep referring to live and on demand. So teachers would be able to record instruction to be posted in their Canvas page daily for students who are not able to access the live instruction. But for those who can, we want to make that as a possibility 5 days a week. So that is the goal, Mr. Morial. That is what we're striving to attain. It will be completely different in vision compared to the spring when we had what I call kind of emergency remote learning. We want to make sure that kids are engaged much more 5 days a week as opposed to just the 1 day they come in for face-to-face. The manner in which we deliver that may be a little different than we're used to, right? As an example, we have a lot of I'll just use an elementary model. A lot of our schools in elementary do what's called departmentalization, where one teacher teaches math, one teacher teaches English language arts, and one teacher teaches science. In this model, you may have a face-to-face teacher and you may have a remote learning teacher. If you're in Plan D, you may have a virtual teacher that would be live from that classroom teaching a class of kids. So we want to be clear that our expectation and our goal is that we want our students to be able to watch instruction happening from the classroom, even if they can't physically be there, or access a recorded video of that daily instruction on their own time.
So to be clear, Joe, just to go on to your idea. So let's say, like you said, somebody has math and then social studies and then science and then language arts. They could, if they're an A day person, they would go to those classes that day, or the teacher comes to them, whichever. But on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they can have their day look exactly like that and sit down with their Chromebook and go through math and correct? Is that what the idea is? Or you can do it on demand when maybe you have a doctor's appointment that's morning or something, you can't make it. But the idea is, right, that they would be able to go through their schedule as if they were school in front of a laptop.
That's the idea, yes, and that is the goal. And I want to preface that by saying we have to build the capacity of our teachers to deliver in that model because they've never done it before. So should you expect that perfectly and ideally the week of August 17th, we're still working on our PD plan and training teachers on that piece. But as we get into school, yes, you are correct. That is what we're striving to attain.
And I see
I have
Mr.
one
Parker
question.
right beneath you here, nodding his head, and I have the utmost faith in your ability to be able to deliver this. So, no
And I had a
question.
question around that too. I know recently for our graduations, we had to go to a third party to have our graduation streamed. Looking at a Weddington High School you could potentially have 60, 70 classes being streamed at one time. Do we have the capability of doing that?
I'll let Mr. Parker comment on the field testing that we've done.
Yes, sir. As Dr. Hoohan alluded, we have done capacity checks and we have burstable streaming capability in all of our schools for our teachers to use a product called Microsoft Teams. It's integrated to Canvas, and teachers will have two options, to either stream live or they can record the session and post it, for viewing later. But we have the capability to do it and the capacity to do it.
I have one question too. How are we going to be tracking absences and everything?
Yes, that is going to be a requirement, much different from last year. We are going to be, how we're going to do that. We're still figuring out the details of that plan, but we will be expecting an attendance check during the day because we have to report that for ADM and other reasons to the state. So an attendance aspect would be checked no matter what plan we're under.
Okay, good. So for virtual as well, you would do attendance checks. Okay.
Correct.
The other question is, what about siblings? So let's say a family has 2 or 3 children in Union County Public Schools. Is there, if they wanted to, is there a way that they can get all their students going to school on the same day?
That is going to be a priority in terms of selecting the days in which students are scheduled. In talking with Mr. Parker, we have the ability to run a sibling roster report that we can give to principals that will indicate by address the number of families in a particular building that have multiple children. And that one of the significant priorities will be to allow families to schedule students to the best extent possible so that their whole family, especially within the school, as an example, in my case, we have 2 that go to the same school, right? There's no reason why we can't figure out how to schedule that where they go to school on the same day. That will be one of our student selection criteria. That would be a priority or a preference that we ask our building principals to consider when scheduling students.
Drew,
What about sports? If a student or a family chose option D or the virtual, are they still eligible for sports?
Yes, sir, they are. They would still be eligible for extracurricular clubs, athletics. We do want to acknowledge that as part of the creation of these academies, we have to seek, I'm not sure if the word waiver is correct or approval, but the courses that our students will be taking will have to meet NCAA collegiate eligibility requirements. And we are working to submit that request to the NCAA and the state so that we can allow that to happen. But we did not want to make that a barrier, and we do want to allow students to take advantage of that.
Great. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So, and I know this is getting into the weeds, but these are the questions that are going to come up. So if a student is at home on their off days and they have a question about something that the teacher is doing either a live or a taped presentation on, how are these kids going to ask questions? if it's not in a Zoom meeting and that sort of thing? How are we going to do that? And how are we supporting our teachers to make sure that they are comfortable? Have we done any professional development up to this point about online learning for those that will be, well, the ones that are not in the classroom full time, but the ones that still have to record lessons online?
So we still have work to do on that subject. What I would tell you is that, you know, depending on how principals, based on their staff capacity and their their assignment, in the example that I use, Ms. Helms, where you may have a dedicated remote learning teacher and a dedicated face-to-face teacher, that would be possible where, feedback on the days in which you're not physically in school and able to learn remotely, that would take care of that situation. From a staff development standpoint, I know that when we launched into remote learning, we had hundreds of teachers and complete modules on remote learning, specifically with Canvas. And we are continuing to update our professional development plan and to offer additional opportunities for teachers to gain and enhance their capacity. That would be, not just when we come back in August, but hopefully as soon as possible. So that is all something we understand that we have to offer. We will be offering. We've made a lot of advances in growth from the spring semester on that subject. The big thing about any kind of a Plan B model, we have to ensure that while students are at home, they are engaging and learning. That is going to be an expectation. And in talking with our principals, they feel strongly about how to maneuver staff in order to provide that while they're not physically in the building.
Okay, so how will we test these kids in subjects? Will they do it online? And again, I know this is in the weeds question, but these are the questions that we have to answer because people are going to start calling and emailing, texting, etc. How is that going to work? I mean, I know there's that, really in the weeds, but parents that are watching want to have answers to these questions now.
I understand that, and these are the kinds of questions that we all have to still work through. I think those are the kinds of questions that in our final detailed plan, we hope to answer. I think that, unless we have a secured testing platform for the completion of assessments or exams at home, we would have to offer those face-to-face whenever children are in buildings. So I don't have an exact answer for you, but there isn't right now a technical solution for quizzes, et cetera, unless that is a formative assessment or kind of a check-in that is through a platform we're already using, such as a comprehension question or quiz from Mayan, as an example. So I think those are some questions that we still need some time to really get a detailed answer to.
So, will teachers be required to, across the board, all upload information the same way? Because I know last spring, one teacher would do it, X, Y, and Z, and another teacher would do A, B, and C. And it was very confusing and very frustrating for the parents because they had to go to multiple sources to figure out what their kids were supposed to be doing. And it was hard for the parents. So are we ensuring that everybody's going to upload any information the exact same way?
So we've made a lot of progress in that area, and we are designating and expecting Canvas to be the platform K-12 for all teacher communication with regard to instruction. And that will be the guidelines that we set forth, that they use Canvas for that information.
So will this plan also accommodate our Title I schools? There may not be home whenever this curriculum is, or expectations they're provided to our students.
So we will be The short answer is yes, but we have to ensure that all of our students are going to be well equipped to handle a schedule like this. With regard to students that may be at home, one update I forgot to mention is under Mr. Parker's leadership, we are securing additional hotspots that are 5G that we can give out to students in grades, K through 12 based on their internet and access needs. Obviously, with the provision of a device in grades 2 through 12, that would be a really important thing. But we also recognize that in any school, accessing a live instructional model may not work for them. So we believe that by recording lessons and at least in our elementary schools, probably providing some sense of a blended learning opportunity with print resources is also going to be something we have to focus on as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Houlihan, if somebody opts into the virtual academy, the school within a school, are they in that for the entire year? Or if restrictions ease, do they have the opportunity to then move back into the classroom if we move to a plan A?
So right now, the way that we have set this up is to at least get a first semester commitment and to evaluate that at the end of the semester, kind of based on where we are and whether or not, we want our students to be successful in that environment. And obviously, if they're, for whatever reason, that's not meeting their needs, they would have the ability second semester to come back in to a face-to-face if we move in that direction. But we are asking for at least a first semester commitment.
And is there a cap as far as the enrollees? So if 50% of our population decides that they want to go to plan D, would that perhaps ease our restrictions on our A through D day and perhaps just have an A day, B day and allow us to go to school 2 times a week?
Absolutely. And I think that's why I want to keep reiterating this is all subject to change based on data. In your example, Mr. Morial, if 50% of our families say, I want option D, that's going to lower the face-to-face enrollment under Plan B, right? And so because of that reduction, we should be able to offer more face-to-face if possible, following these 6 feet of social distancing. So, we just don't know that right now. And I think that's really why it's important to get that application out there, get that data back in. And if we're in a different position in 3 weeks with this plan, I'll be glad to come back to the board with an adjustment.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to follow up on that. So your current model of 1 time per week broken into 4 parts is based on the current school population, assuming they all want to utilize Plan B, correct? That's your assumption right now.
That is correct.
Okay. And then with Mr. Morial's scenario, that could, a significant change to D could in fact change to the positive more days a week. You had mentioned very briefly first week of school, and I know there's some conflicting information about what that's supposed to look like. Have you had any kind of clarification on the first week of school?
There's been some confusion with regard to, can we start the first week of school under remote learning? A representative from the Department of Justice, I believe yesterday, put out an opinion piece with regard to their interpretation of the current statute that in their opinion cleared the way for remote learning to begin based on the needs of a school district even the week of August 17th. That's the latest information that I've received. I did share that with our board leadership, but I believe that gives districts the green light, I suppose, to begin under August 17th with remote learning if we need to.
Do you anticipate it taking until the 20-day numbers are in order to adjust, or what's your timeline for finding out what the population or the commitments to Plan D are that you might enable us to adjust the 4 days, the 4 groupings within each cohort?
My goal, that survey or that application would end a week from this coming Sunday. And so that would give me time to collect that data and report back to the board as to whether or not, I would say at the August board meeting, as to whether or not that based on that, we have the ability to make any adjustments. Beyond that, I really think this is going to be once the school year begins, on a weekly basis, tracking that data with regard to enrollment, with regard to any confirmed cases that we have. I mean, there's a lot of unknown certainties that we have to really address. So I would say at the earliest, I will be prepared to report back to the board at the August board meeting with any updates to a proposed change to Plan B.
And at that point, we'll have, or Gary, did you have a follow on?
I do, but go ahead.
At that point, we would know what's going on. We would have the packet that you guys are working on with respect to more details about the plan for opening schools, and maybe we can have a bigger discussion, because I think some of the parents are going to want to know things like what will it take for a student who's asymptomatic and test positive or has symptoms of COVID. What do we do at that point? How many people in one school would that shut down the school? What about teachers who get sick and things like that? Then do we have substitutes in our schools that are going from school to school to school? I mean, I don't know how all that's going to work. Is that stuff that you're going to address in the guidelines that you're working on for our reopening plan? Because I think parents and board members are going to want to know that kind of information as well.
Yes, that is the kind of information we are working on to include in a much higher, deeper, more detailed plan.
Okay, and because Gary brought up ADM and 20-day numbers, I want to just to remind everybody, mostly the public that's watching, is our funding is based upon the schools in North Carolina's funding is based on the 20th day of school or the 40th day of school, the numbers of students at that school, whichever of the two is the highest. If we lose students or to homeschooling or to anything like that, we have planned for this school year based upon the number of students that DPI says we're going to have in school. If that changes or fluctuates downward from that, we're going to have to look at our staffing model and what we have to do. So I just encourage everybody to give this a chance, and because we're giving choices, it sounds like we're giving a choice that you can do all virtual if you don't want to go to school, and we're giving the chance to go to school, and it's going to be evolving. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And I also wanted to throw out there that we have ordered new laptops for grades 3 through 5. So those will be going home, as Dr. Houlihan said, this year, where they didn't go home during remote learning last year. So that's another great thing.
I want to second what Ms. Heintel has mentioned. We are not forcing parents to do anything. We are giving the best two options we feel like we can come up with, given how we're dictated by the governor's office and ultimately, the state. You have an option. If your child has health concerns, if you have concerns for your student to attend school, then choose option D. The worst thing that can happen is that these kids just drop off the radar. And as Ms. Heintel said, we lose positions because the kids we don't know where they went. And if you want your child to participate in some shape or form in going into the classroom, which is what I'm personally going to do, my wife and I have decided for our family. But if you don't feel comfortable with that for whatever reason, then by all means, choose option D and go with the virtual academy for one semester. Let's all hope and pray that this goes away as soon as possible. And at the Christmas break, we're all rejoicing because we're coming back, if not sooner. But you have options to meet how you, particularly your family, feels is best for your family. And the other point I wanted to make, Drew, not as if you don't have enough to do already, but we, in the curriculum committee meeting, Mr. Strickland gave us some exciting numbers for the number of meals we've been able to distribute since March and over the summer. And I just want to, just more of a comment, that staff is working to see if there's some type of waiver that can be obtained so that in some shape or form we can continue that process. Mr. Strickland, are you on the call? Do you want to address that real quick for free and lunch?
Sure, be glad to, Mr. Side. So we have served, I think I gave you the number, just over 225,000 meals since March. The School Nutrition Association of North Carolina, and I believe the National Association, has asked the USDA for a waiver so that we can continue serving meals just as we are right now under the summer food service program. That allows us to cast a wide net to serve meals in many places. It allows grab and go in places where we normally can't do it. As it stands right now, we don't have that waiver. We're hopeful that it will come, but we don't have it right now. So we're looking at food service options to move forward in the school year. If we get the waiver, we're likely to open sites throughout the county in strategic locations where we can provide grab and go service.
Thank you. And thanks to all of our food service professionals, SROs, and staff, everyone involved in distributing it. That's just amazing. 250,000 kids received meals because of the efforts of you folks. And I want to thank you for that.
I guess the other question is, we have a lot of working parents out there that having school one day a week or virtual school where they're home all the time, this is going to be difficult. And I just want to acknowledge that we know that. And this is kind of where we are with where the plan is supposed to go this year. And I just want to
I acknowledge that as well. And again, I want to reiterate the fact that we are highly committed to trying to figure out how to get more days of face-to-face instruction, even under Plan B. A lot will be answered with that question as we release our application for our virtual school option. And again, I'll be coming back to the board with some updates. But I do want to also acknowledge we recognize that, and we are committed to helping reduce that burden as much as we can.
And I appreciate that. And I know that parents out there are going to say, well, it's going to be another week before we know it. But it's a critical part of the plan to find out how many kids are going to take the virtual thing that opens up things in schools that we can still do with 6 feet social distancing. Does anyone else have any questions that happen?
Yeah, so with regards to the sign up for Plan D, how exactly are we going to conduct that? So is it just going to be a sign up sheet if you're interested? Are we going to be polling every student that we have enrolled to find out if they're doing Plan B or Plan D? I just don't know if everybody is tuning into this and if like what the communication plan is to get this out to every single student and parent within the county.
So it will be a twofold communication. One, a district message through all of our communication channels that we normally would do: text, email, phone call, social media, etc. And then every school would follow up with their own school-based message reminding parents of the application window, not just when we launch it, but I would suggest during the window while it's active, to make sure we can try and have multiple forms of communication. In terms of the actual, we're referring to this as a very similar to like a school choice application, trying to kind of treat this like a magnet school, for lack of a better word, within your building. And I can ask Ms. Morris, she's taking lead for us on the development of that with our partner Scribbles. And so Ms. Morris, if you want to comment on that, please do so.
I don't have much to add. That we are working with Scribbles, and they will be developing a portal that will open next week. And then the schools will be notified who at the grade level from their school is requested to be in the online program.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have some more.
Okay.
So for elementary school, when my student would be in their day on premise, what would a typical day look like? Are they confined to the four walls all day? Are they gonna still have an opportunity for recess? Like, help me understand what that looks like with our new social distancing guidelines.
I think it's going to be a combination of efforts, to be honest with you. I believe that, well, I don't have an actual, schedule written down anywhere, because I'm leaving that to our principals to help figure that out. What I would say to you is, would recess be provided? Yeah, in some form or fashion, we have to allow kids to have that opportunity, but we also have to train our staff on how do you work with kids with regards to social distancing, right? What happens if a mask comes off? The degree of monitoring is going to be really important. You could also see, at least maybe even starting the school year off, with doing more of an indoor recess kind of a thing, where you're able to monitor a little bit closer. So we still recognize that needs to be a priority, that we give our children the chance to go outside and to run and to play. But I think what you'll see is a different level of monitoring. That's another reason why, if we're able to do the ABCD, when you reduce the number of kids in your classroom from a face-to-face environment, that degree of monitoring becomes much easier. I don't want to say it's going to be easy at all. It's going to be hard, but it becomes, when you're focusing on 8 to 12 kids compared to 25 or 24, there's a difference there. And we'll have a much more laser-like focused. I know, in talking about things like PE and art and music, that one recommendation that we will be making, and I've talked to principals about, is consider kind of a 6-week wheel schedule, almost like middle schools do, where depending on what day you come on, Monday, kids who come on Monday might be an art day. Tuesday may be a music day. Wednesday may be a PE day. And as long as we're under Plan B, every 4 to 6 weeks, those daily rotations would change. So over the course of the year, your child would still get efficient art, music, PE instruction. STEM would be another one, and or library time. So those are all kind of some details that our principals will be working through. But in concept, that's kind of what we've thought about right now, Mr. Morial, with regard to how we would accomplish those schedules.
Okay. Next question is with regards to high schoolers. So not every high school student is destined for a college path, right? So we have a lot that are studying trades. What would that look like? Because there's a lot of hands-on. I don't know that 1 day a week is sufficient for, trade learning. If you're going to become a mechanic and you're in the auto shop typically 4 days a week, like what does that look like in a Plan B setting?
That's a question I really need to ask Mr. Brian Davis from a CTE perspective. I know that from the spring semester, we've tried to move a lot of our CTE offerings to a virtual component. As an example, I know that there is a great program that we've been using. I can't remember the name of it, to look at virtual welding as an example. So I think that there are some solutions to those. Maybe not a solution for every course or every class from a virtual standpoint. We may be limited in some of the kind of laboratory activities that we can provide, unless we're able to come in a more face-to-face environment. So I don't have a very detailed answer for you compared to like the schedule question, but that is something that we will certainly ask Dr. Breedlove and his team to look at.
Okay. Just 2 more questions, I promise.
Joe, can I piggyback on this for a second though?
Yep.
So for things like art and band and things like that, those are still going to continue, just in smaller groups as if there's classes, correct?
Correct, yes.
We're still required to make the kids take PE and things like that, correct? I lost you now. There you go.
Correct. And I think today in the guidance issued by DHHS, that toolkit was updated to reflect those requirements for PE.
That's what I thought. Okay.
PE, band, chorus, etc.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, Joe. You can go now.
No worries. Next question is probably more for Mr. Parker. So how will damaged or faulty Chromebooks be repaired and or replaced? Have we thought through that?
Yeah, We still will have engineers that are visiting the buildings to pick up damage repair laptops and give them back. In the past and all summer long since March, we've been collecting broken Chromebooks, repairing them and delivering them back to the schools for pickup. We've also discussed in a couple sidebar discussions with Mark about, how could we put those on buses? I mean, how could we get them out? Is there another way of delivering them to the schools, to the home of the students instead of them coming to the schools? But we have enough spare, so if a child broke their laptop or their Chromebook, we're able to provide one for them for instruction while it is getting repaired.
Okay, great. And then my last question is probably, I don't know if this is for Mr. McGraw, but what's the protocol if a teacher and or student becomes infected and is the classroom kind of like self-quarantined then for 14 days?
That's what I asked, and that they're gonna put together a packet that if somebody has symptoms or doesn't have symptoms, they test positive. What will be the procedure of the days out of school? What about if it happens with a teacher? Will the rest of the students in that class be notified? I assume that they're going to do it in the packet that they're still working on, but I would like to hear what Jared has to say as well.
Yeah, Mr. Moriel, Ms. Heintel, I've talked to the local health director today. We're going to work together. This is a situation where every case is going to be unique, and we'll have to look into each case, whether it involves a staff member, a teacher, or a student. We're going to work on protocols where we address each situation. The main thing we want to do is keep our school buildings open first, and then we would try to focus on the student, the staff member, or the teacher. First of all, you would want to send them home for a certain period of time, and that's in the guidance. And then you would have to see if anybody else was exposed. And, wearing of mask is very important, and everybody in the school building should have a mask on. The 6-foot social distancing is going to be important. And one other component you normally look at is if you were around someone for 15 minutes or longer, and it was in a distance of less than 6 feet. But we're working on that guidance now. We're going to work with our local health department and our county officials to develop guidance for that.
Jared, who's going to administer the test every day to the students and teachers?
Our nurses will be heavily involved with that, Mr. Price. We'll also have to train other staff members. We received a starter pack from the state of North Carolina. In that starter pack, there is one thermometer for every 100 students. And the way that was figured is within 100 students, you should be able to check 100 students within about 30 minutes.
Do we have enough nurses currently for every school?
Well, and that's one positive thing we have done with some of our funding we received. We had 43. We're going to be able to provide 10 more nurses either through hiring them or through contracted services. So we will have a nurse in every school. We'll have 53 nurses, and we have our 2 nursing supervisors. So we are going to be able to do that as we start back to school. We will be doing temperature checks every morning and screening of every student, every teacher, and every staff member that enters the building. And as Dr. Houlihan mentioned earlier, we will be limiting non-essential visitors coming into the building. So I don't think people should be surprised if they're not employees, if they're not students, they're not going to be coming into our building just due to the new guidelines. But we'll be working through that. I think with limiting capacity, that gives us the ability to work through these processes, and it'll take some time to get better at checking temperatures, doing the screenings, the questionnaires, just making sure everybody's ready to come into that building. Health and safety will be our #1 focus all day long.
Jared, when we talk about testing, we are not referring to UCPS personnel administering COVID tests to either students or staff, correct?
You're correct, Mr. Sides. Any kind of COVID test would not be given by UCPS. You would have to contact your personal physician or work with the local health department on locating a medical facility that would give you a COVID test. Our testing would be a temperature screen with a non-touch temporal thermometer, and it would also be just a screening, a questionnaire. We do not give COVID tests.
Thank you.
Another question. So K through 1, there's no virtual. So what if we have families that don't want their child to go to school because they're compromised or something like that? Do we have any ability to do that, or is that just?
So it's my understanding that within the district and within a school, anyone that, because this is a Plan B plan, and because you can be more restrictive, i.e. you can be on Plan C, which is remote learning, that I believe that we will be having to offer that plan to those individuals, even on K1. I don't have specifics right now on the staffing and the maneuverability of how that will work, but I do believe that while Plan D may not be an option, and again, Plan D is really devoted to begin with, in theory, for those students where we're giving them a device and ensuring that is in place. I believe under K1, if a family needs to operate in that similar environment, that would fall under the Plan C, remote learning with their teacher. And we would work with those families on a case-by-case basis to keep them enrolled, but under a Plan C option, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have an additional comment. I realize there are going to be a lot of parents that are frustrated with the outcome that we're facing. I get it. I'm one. Here we sit at July 14th, and we get our first picture of what school will at least start out and what our options are and what they aren't. And I just want to recognize staff for the Herculean efforts. Think about this, folks. We're having to basically totally reinvent education in our county and get it right in a little over a month. And we haven't had the kind of direction that we really needed to get a head start until today at 3 o'clock. And so we're trying to pick up these pieces and put this data together. And parents, I know it's a hard decision, and you need to make it quickly so we can respond. And then teachers got to put everything together. Oh, and by the way, we want you to stay safe too. And kids, we're going to try and teach you something this semester as well. It is a unbelievable challenge for all of us. We're all going to be frustrated. We're all not going to be happy with the process and even perhaps the outcomes. But at least we have the option to get those kids in the building, in their class, in front of a teacher 1 day a week. That's one more day a week than we have had since March 13th. We got to start somewhere. I don't want to mean to be preaching at anybody, but let's do what we can to get the statistics down so we can get these kids back in school on a more consistent basis so they will benefit. So I'll just speak for all my colleagues on the board and all of staff. We're committed to doing what we can with what we're being given to work with. So we need your help. End of sermon.
I agree. I mean, it's not everybody's going to love everything we're doing, but this is kind of where we are, and we're trying the best that we can do to get something. But I agree with Mr. Sykes. Having the students come in once a week, we talked about the model where you go for a week and then the next 2 weeks you're off. But this allows the teachers to see their students every week in school and help out where they're having trouble and things like this. I mean, this is kind of where we are, making the best of it. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I'll just say thank you for that. And I will acknowledge that I understand that this will all be frustrating for a lot of us, for parents, for staff. And I just want to keep reiterating that this is all subject to change based on state and local conditions. We are trying to give as many options as we can to successfully open the school year. And there is a deep commitment for those that need more face-to-face instruction, that we can figure that out. The option D of a virtual is something I think will be brand new for us. And I think there will be a tremendous amount of folks who take us up on that offer, and that will be brand new. And with anything new, and with starting school in a brand new way that we've never done before, there are going to be hiccups. I mean, there are going to be challenges. And I just ask that that we all remain patient. One thing that I've learned in my almost 4 years with UCPS is when we can collectively commit to a strategy and can commit to an idea and understand the kind of how to make things happen. We have great people here. We have great teachers. We have great principals. We have great board members. We have great community partners. And we preach all the time, Team UCPS. And if there's ever a time to come together to reinvent and think about how do we have school in the safest way possible, the time is now. And I just ask our community to understand that, to understand that I recognize that this is not ideal, and that we are all committed to growing our Plan B model based on data and based on parent choice and based on the conditions within our schools.
And I totally agree with you. And after this, I know our teachers have spent parts of their summers trying to come up with ideas to make this work. I mean, the whole idea of the part of Plan D was originally talked about by teachers, and then you guys enhanced it and got better at it. I mean, all of this is stuff that people in the classrooms and in the buildings and at central office that they've come up with to make things work, especially going from a remote learning in April and May, where we didn't have the same type of learning. So this is great that if we can have online, learning with teachers, and you also have the opportunity to read it later on or watch it later on demand. So I think these are some great things that we've come up with.
Ms. Heinkel,
not we as in you guys came up with, and I appreciate it. So I know that this is on the agenda for action. So is this to approve our Plan B plan as it exists right now and our Plan D plan? And but we'll come back once you have more information on who's taking the Plan D model and whether or not that helps us in other ways of getting kids into school more. And then the other is the guidelines with respect to schools and COVID and things like that. So are we just approving this part of it so you can keep working on it? Here's the thing, we don't have to wait till the August meeting. If you need us to come together again before then, when you have things that you want us to approve or you want to talk about, we can do that easily. Because you're right, this is very fluid and we have to be very flexible. And if we need to have more meetings to talk about this, we can do that. But I guess I'm asking what we're looking to approve this evening.
would it be appropriate for a motion to approve the implementation of staff's recommended Plan B option as well as Plan D virtual academy to begin the implementation? Would that be an appropriate motion?
Michelle, is that good? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I need a second.
Second.
anyone have any more discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, so that's 7-0. Thank you very much. And I know that we're gonna have questions from parents and stuff after this, and I know that our email boxes are probably full at this point, but I appreciate the discussion and the questions that got asked, because I do think we answered some questions, but there's still a lot out there to answer. But we'll know a little bit more in a week or so, about 10 days, so that would be great. Anybody else?
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Good evening,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good
Great
night.
job.
Bye.